Chairman Zalaski, Ranking Members Guglielmo and Rigby, and members of the Labor and Public Employees Committee. I'm here to express my opposition to both SB 352, an act creating a process for family child care providers to collectively bargain with the state, and also HB 5433, an act creating a procedure for personal care attendants to collectively bargain with the state. My primary objection is that I believe these bills to be built on a faulty premise. Both of them require that legitimate majority representatives have been established and are now lobbying for the ability to collectively bargain with the state. I submit that this is not, nor has ever been the case. You may be aware that the first legal challenge to the governor's executive orders 9 and 10 has already been filed, and another is forthcoming. It's these executive orders that I characterize as the faulty foundation. Simply put, the governor did not have the authority to issue these executive orders. It is the responsibility of this body, the Connecticut General Assembly, to make the laws of our state. The governor is limited to enforcing existing laws only and not to be making any new law. The governor's administration has repeatedly claimed that the executive orders were not binding in any way. These two pending bills are proof to the contrary. These two bills rely on the executive orders to have established the necessary process for unionization so that this request for the ability to collectively bargain can even occur. In the case of the daycare providers, they have already been unionized, but what I would consider a very questionable process laid out within the executive order number 9. Most notably, neither the daycare providers nor the personal care attendants asked for this. To the contrary, this unionization process has come via a national effort that is being played out in several states. Further, both bills clearly state that neither group will be considered state employees. This I applaud as it's an accurate statement. Yet, they will be represented by a union whose responsibility is to negotiate on their behalf with the state. This makes little sense considering that neither group is the true beneficiary of the state funds that the union is going to be negotiating about. In the case of the daycare providers, they are merely the final recipient of funds to benefit parents who send their kids to daycare via a Care for Kids subsidy. Similarly, the PCAs are the final recipient of money provided via the Medicaid waiver program to their employers, who are typically members of the disabled community. Finally, the governor has failed to make clear who specifically is going to be affected by this legislation. In a letter from January 6th that Senator Markley and I, who's right behind me, we sent a letter to the governor and we asked for clarification about the inclusion of daycare providers who do not receive Care for Kids funds, and if those in or out of that program are going to have the opportunity to choose to be in or out of the bargaining unit. We also asked by what authority the executive branch can establish the process for unionization, including the procedure for elections, which state or federal labor law allows the governor to unionize independent business people who are clearly not employees, or in the case of PCAs, domestic workers of many different individual employers. I have no objection to the establishment of either group forming a union or being able to collectively bargain. My concern is that this is not happening due to an effort from within these individual communities of daycare providers or PCAs. That, along with the apparent conflicts in our own state and national labor law, make it increasingly clear that this legislation cannot move forward. I guess that's my testimony for today. I hope you'll consider my concerns and reject these two proposals. And I really would relish the opportunity to answer any questions, so please ask.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any questions from the committee? Yes. Senator Gomes.
I just have a couple of questions. You referred to the executive orders. Now you also say that you're against the two bills. Are you against the executive order because the governor himself solely ordered, through executive order, ordered these bills?
Well, there's a combination of factors, Senator Gomes, but first and foremost, the two executive orders were based on legislation that was on its way through this body in the previous session that did not become law. I think the mere fact that it was attempted to be passed via our legislature requires that it needed to. So to me, it makes little sense that the governor would have the authority to do that without us.
Do you feel that the services provided by these people are very important?
Absolutely, Representative. I know many of them personally, both daycare providers and PCAs.
Okay. Are you aware that of the fact that they have, for the services they provide, they currently have very low wages and basically can't afford medical insurance?
I don't know that that's necessarily an accurate statement, or it's our duty as the government. I don't know that it's our proper role to change the rules for anyone to be compensated more or less.
I see. I'm just basically trying to get a feel for, you know, why you feel the way you do, and it's like I say to myself, you know, you say that you feel that these are important jobs that they're doing, and right now I have, after doing research, I've come to the determination that for the services they provide, they are underpaid, and I did find out that many of them cannot afford to pay for medical insurance, are not offered medical insurance, and I guess it's a difference in ideology, because I know when we proposed tax increases to the higher brackets of earners to hope to so that we could appropriate more funding for Medicare. I'm wondering, were you supportive of those initiatives or not?
Forgive me, Representative. I feel some kind of implication that somehow, because I'm against these specific bills and the process for which this attempted unionization is occurring, that somehow I don't care about the individuals involved. First,
No,
it's
I'm not
not. It's
implying
first.
that.
It's, well, no. Forgive me. That's what I took away from that.
Okay.
First, it's not really relevant. But I can assure you that I absolutely do care about their individual circumstances. And that's the one thing that I always try and remember as my duty as a legislator, is that my job is to protect all individuals equally. That is the
Exactly.
foundational principle of America, is that everyone is an individual and their rights need to be protected. When it comes to this unionization, there are many, many folks that were not allowed to take part in the discussion. This happened in a very, very rapid manner, and with many, many people that are going to be affected by the ultimate outcome not even being aware of it. And I'm quite certain that many of the people that are going to testify today are going to reiterate that same point. I was part of a forum that took place among daycare providers this past weekend, and we had 125 daycare providers right in that room that were opposed to the unionization, which strikes me as completely amazing, considering the vote tally showed only 87 out of the entire group of ballot receiving daycare providers voted no. So I don't know how I was able to assemble 125 of them in one room on the spur of the moment when only 87 voted no out of the whole group. And that's because I believe many of these folks didn't receive a proper ballot and did not even know the process was forthcoming. I will just state that I am absolutely for anything that is going to improve the lives of any of our citizens in our country, but I feel that the number one thing that would benefit these folks is freedom, and there's the freedom to choose whether or not they want to join the union, yes or no. And I don't believe they were all offered that option.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Gomes has another question.
Just a short one. You said that you are for these anything that will improve the betterment of somebody's life, for them to have the right to get to that point. A little while ago, you made a statement that we as a legislator are not here to set rates of pay. Well, don't you think that that statement that does not ring true here, because whether we're going to be for it or against it, what they're proposing here is some sort of system where the people themselves can negotiate for the rates of pay and not us. Is that true or not?
Well, Senator Gomes, forgive me, but the folks that we're talking about do set their rates of pay. In the case of the daycare providers, they charge a parent for taking care of a child whatever their rate is. It just so happens that that child's parent is potentially a recipient of a Care for Kids subsidy, which they might use to offset that cost.
Well,
I mean,
what
this
I
is
would-
part of my problem with this thing, is it makes absolutely no sense. These daycare providers are not the ones receiving the money. Of course, ultimately, the check ends up in their hands and they receive the money, but the money is for the child's parent. And now we're going to put these people in a position to essentially negotiate with the state for the amount of this subsidy. And that makes no sense to me. What do they have to do with that? They're
Well-
charging the parent whatever their rate is.
Well, regardless of how we get to it, I was just trying to clarify your statement saying we don't have the right as legislators to set rates of pay. We don't. You're right about that. And what I see here and what you've admitted, that somewhere in the future, these people are going to have to negotiate. We aren't setting rates of pay. What we're trying to do here is we're talking about a system that will allow them to participate in their own livelihood.
Right. Well, I believe that daycare providers are small business owners in and of themselves, and as such, they have the right to determine how they run their own business without our interference.
I
And
agree
they
with
should be
you.
able to charge whatever they want.
I agree with you, but I'm just looking at this in general as whether we vote it up, down, or what. But this is what the procedure is. It is not somebody advocating or demanding that a rate of pay or benefits or anything should be established. We're just trying to clear the way for people themselves to negotiate their own rate of pay, benefits, anything that will improve their livelihood.
I would say that they already have that right. PCAs absolutely have the right to negotiate with their employers how much they're compensated for. Amount of the Medicaid waiver or the amount of a Care for Kids subsidy is something certainly that is going to be dictated by a legislative body. But the amount that a PCA is paid by the employer is not solely based on that. They can negotiate their own terms of employment. And the same thing with a daycare provider. They can negotiate the terms of what they charge a parent for the child. And essentially, I'm afraid that this is going to go a long way to taking away those individual abilities for those folks. You know, this is my problem a lot of times. I'm not opposed to collective bargaining under the right circumstances. I just think, as I stated from the outset, it needs to happen because of a movement from the people involved. No two daycare providers got together and said, gee, we're going to form a union. That's not how this happened. If they felt that that was necessary to go ahead and further their ability to get proper wages, then I think that would have happened. But it didn't. This is happening because of a national movement to put these folks into a union. That may or may not end up happening. But again, in the end, I think that the best situation is when individuals have the right to negotiate their own situation, especially if we're talking about small business owners.